of development and change which lie ahead are certain to throw up many new problems. We should not be afraid of these. You will surely surmount them if you stand by your faith and meet your difficulties in the spirit of humility and tolerance which our religion demands of us. This is especially important for the younger generations who will have to carry the future on their shoulders. Only the faith of your fathers can sustain you and enable you to live in peace here in this world and in the next.
Yalimadat, welcome, bienvenue. Thank you for joining us for another Friday Night Reflections. My name is Riaz Meghji, and I'd like to extend a special welcome to all of our Jamati members, multi-faith family members, and everyone tuning in from across the country and around the world. As I join you from my home here in Vancouver, British Columbia for this program, this weekend marks a significant milestone. Tomorrow marks 1 year since our Jamatkhanas were closed and we all began to navigate this unfamiliar reality of living in isolation. Isolation from our practice of communal prayer, isolation from our physical presence of service in the community, isolation from our social rituals of effortlessly connecting with loved ones in each other's physical presence. In many ways, we've been in a constant state of anxiety and grief over the loss of the way we used to live our lives. It has been challenging, yet our community has found creative ways for us to be present in each other's absence. Tonight's program for Friday Night Reflections will bring you a vital conversation surrounding mental health. The physical and mental impacts of isolation and loneliness have been felt by all of us around the world. Yet there's a great paradox with loneliness. Many of us feel it, yet many of us feel it alone. It can be hard to open up and share the tough reality that I have nobody to talk to. Now more than ever is our opportunity to remove the stigma. I remember feeling overwhelmed when everything changed in March of 2020, then later being inspired by the creativity of how we began to connect in new and innovative ways. We are fortunate to have had our community lift each other up during the past year through broadcasts just like this one. And tonight, we explore the mental health impact of the past year, how we can combat feelings of loneliness and isolation, and more importantly, continue to connect on deeper levels. But first, tonight we will be joined by President Ameerally Kassim-Lakha, who will provide insight to allow members of the Jamaat to build back better from this pandemic. I will then be joined by Dr. Ayaz Kurji and Alwaeza, Dr. Taslim Alani-Verjee, for our feature conversation on mental health. We will then learn a little bit more about the variety of available vaccines on our COVID conversation segment. And for you regulars, you know, as always, we will conclude with some musical expressions. But as we get things going, let us now welcome our President, Ameerally Kassim-Lakha.
My dear brothers and sisters, Yalimadat. A few weeks ago, in our mini-series From the Heart, we discussed several character traits crucial to success in today's world. We discussed agency, vision, humility, and resilience. It is in this spirit that I discuss with you today the importance of networking. A network refers to the people we know, those with whom we nurture a relationship with over the long term. To network is to increase the number of people within our professional and personal circle. Networking expands the perspectives and the volume of opportunities that we have access to. Opportunities come from people. In many instances, the only determinant of whether these are available to us is if we are connected to the right individual. Employment research shows that 60 to 80% of jobs are found through personal contacts, not job postings. When an opportunity arises, those with the power to make decisions immediately think of the people in their own network. And if we come to mind, we get the opportunity. Qualifications are important, but in a competitive world, networking is also a crucial determinant of success and progression. It's not only what we know, it's also who we know. Networking is not a concept we learn as students, professionals, or entrepreneurs, but it is critical all the same. So, how do we build a network? As a starting point, we can identify the communities we belong to and strengthen our connections within them. Examples: alumni, workplace, and professional associations. Alhamdulillah, the Ismaili community is a strong community to draw upon. We share a bond of loyalty through our common allegiance and interests. It is natural to support those who are like us and we have affinities with. Our objective is to broaden and deepen our relationships. This includes sharing our aspirations, asking questions, and listening carefully. In networking, we should establish a close connection so there is comfort in seeking support when required. Networking is powerful because of how quickly it scales, putting us in a better position to locate the support we need. If we ask 5 people for support and they each ask 5 more individuals, we quickly have 25 more people who can assist our cause. In today's context, this is facilitated by digital platforms. Networking comes naturally to some and less naturally to others. Like all skills, it takes time and practice to develop. If conducted improperly, networking can feel transactional, as if our interactions are a means to an end. Networking is an opportunity to be authentic and treat people in a genuine, selfless manner that feels comfortable. The biggest impediment to networking is a belief that in asking for help we'll be perceived poorly or we will be rejected. I'm saying to you today, push this thought aside. Take the first step, reach out and ask for help. You will be amazed at how positively people respond. People want to help. They want to give back. They feel closer to us because we have been vulnerable enough to ask for support. And in helping us, they have contributed positively to our life. Networking is one of the most important things we can do to advance our careers. It is not about connecting with as many people as possible. It is about connecting with those who can endorse our skill sets and direct us to other well-connected people. In the process, we build camaraderie and confidence. Networking needs to be embedded in our behavior. As a Jamaat, we need to understand the value proposition. The principles of networking are also the foundation of the family mentorship program that our beloved Hazrat Imam has guided us to expand. Maulana Hazrat Imam told the leadership in Canada that he wants to see mentorship scaled, and he wants us to think about what scaling means. It takes only one supportive family to take another family out of generations of marginalization through proper hand-holding. The solution to marginalization lies in networking and mentorship based on the principle of brotherhood. The notion that when we save a life, it is as if we've saved the whole of humanity. Mentorship is a powerful spiritual concept and a key purpose of networking. My dear brothers and sisters, good mentors are critical to show the path forward. In mentoring, there's a remarkable natural phenomena of paying it forward that comes into play. Just as we receive support along our life journey, so too do we have an opportunity to extend that graciousness to others. If we give good, honest guidance today, someone will give us good, honest guidance tomorrow, or they may give it to our loved ones who need it more. So, approach mentorship and networking with an open heart. Give generously, give good, honest advice, and think deeply of how we can support others. The Persian poet Shams Tabrizi once said, "True mentors are as transparent as glass. They let the light of God pass through them." In other words, genuine mentorship comes from the heart, from the light itself. So remember, the benefit may come back to us, or it may come back to someone we love, a spouse, a parent, a child, or someone of meaning in the generations to come. Thank you, and Khuda Hafiz.
Thank you, President Kassim-Lakha, for that update. And now, I warmly welcome the members of our panel on mental health. Dr. Ayaz Kurji holds a Bachelor of Sciences honors degree in Life Sciences and Psychology, as well as Doctor of Medicine degree from Queen's University. He subsequently completed a residency in psychiatry from the University of Toronto. He focuses on establishing integrated mental health care models at numerous family health teams and community health centers in order to improve access to mental health care, and enjoys teaching primary care providers and residents. He's currently serving as the Honorary Secretary for the Aga Khan Health Board for Canada. Alwaeza, Dr. Taslim Alani-Verjee is a clinical psychologist living and working in Toronto. She is the founder and director of Slim Center for Mental Health, a community-based and social justice-oriented practice that seeks to make mental health awareness and services more accessible to the communities with whom she and her team work. Alwaeza, Dr. Taslim, is a graduate of the International Training Program for Wazin. She is passionate about supporting members of the Jamaat as they find meaningful ways of connecting with their faith and themselves. Alwaeza, Dr. Taslim has a PhD and Master's in Clinical Psychology from Lakehead University and a Master's in International Development Studies. We're lucky to have them on the panel. Thank you for joining us. Ayaz, Taslim, thank you so much for joining us here on Friday Night Reflections. This is obviously an important conversation when it comes to mental health, so thank you for being here.
So glad to be here.
Thanks for having us.
I'm going to start here. We're 1 year in. We're 1 year into this pandemic, and a great deal has changed with how we live our lives. And the focus of this episode is really looking at the question and checking in with people with how they're doing. And if we look at mental health, Ayaz, perhaps we'll start with you. Mental health. How has our mental health across the board, what have you seen of how mental health has been disrupted by the pandemic?
What started as the promise of an exciting new decade quickly turned into something starkly different with the impact of COVID and the changes it has forced on our worlds. It's really easy to feel the fatigue, the weariness, and the weight of all of our responsibilities. And we have all suffered scars this year in some form or the other. While we are all part of the same storm, though, we're not all in the same boats. This pandemic has really highlighted the pre-existing inequities in access to healthcare, housing, income, social supports that exist in Canada. And, through its unequal health burden and the disparity of economic losses. We have, marginalized people or racialized people, new immigrants, those that do not speak French or English, those in smaller living quarters, for example, have been hit worse. For some of us, this pandemic has been a terrible inconvenience, but for others, it's been life-changing.
Well, you're touching on a various amount of issues when it comes to just how life has changed. And Taslim, given the important work that you've been doing, supporting people and working through their personal issues with mental health, can you give us some perspective for those that are watching this that might be thinking, what is the difference between having a bad day and then the realization of being in a bad place and now it's time to reach out and ask for help?
Yeah, thanks for the question, Riaz. I think one of the things is that we think we have to have several bad days or a really bad set of weeks or months before we reach out for support, and that's not at all the case. So yes, many of us have had bad days throughout this pandemic, throughout the past year. And that's, days where we're not really feeling up to the day, days where we might just be feeling drained or exhausted. And those happen, they happen to all of us. They're not necessarily problematic. When we find that it continues to be the case that we're feeling that way after several days or even several weeks, that's usually a telling sign that there's something going on that's not just a bad day anymore. Having said that, there is absolutely nothing wrong with seeking out professional support, even if you're just having a bad day, even if you're having a great day. But especially if you've been having several bad days, several days where you're not feeling yourself, when you're feeling disconnected from the world around you, from the people that you love, perhaps you're feeling on edge, or you're feeling like you just don't have the energy, the drive, the interest, when things just don't feel right, that's usually a good time to reach out for some support.
You're outlining some of the outcomes of what this reality in isolation has been for us. And off the top of this show, we talked about the idea that in many ways we've disrupted our common rituals of prayer, of service, physically being in the community, and how we would socialize. Things that we would take for granted have now changed immensely. And as we do that check-in and really look at the relationship with ourselves, because when we're putting out so much energy to check in on other people, it's easy to neglect ourselves and forget about the recharge that we need. Ayaz, what have you found are really valuable questions we can ask ourselves? And Taslim, if there's questions that stand out to you, please chime in, to really establish that check-in on a daily basis of how am I really doing? What are some questions we can ask ourselves to really check in emotionally on a daily basis?
The situation is a situation that's hard for many of us, and it's okay if you are not able to give your best performance right now. You are not letting yourself, your family, or your work down. There's only so much that you can control. When you do that inward check, it's important, I think, to both acknowledge the difficulties of the situation you're facing, while at the same time seeing your own strengths and encouraging yourself, and as non-judgmentally. And as Taslim said, just like if you have a physical illness, or if you're not feeling quite well, you would go to your doctor to seek some support. There's nothing wrong with that, right? I mean, we exercise and we eat well to look after our physical health, but there's nothing wrong with going to see a doctor when things are not quite right. So similarly with mental health, if you suspect that you may benefit from some support, be proactive and do not hesitate to go to your doctor or primary care nurse practitioner. So I think that's part of being kind to oneself, is catching things early when, before the runaway train goes away, since it's much harder to intervene at that point.
And Taslim, for you, is there anything you want to add to that of maybe common questions? Obviously, we're respecting confidentiality, but common questions or themes that you feel are really popping up given 1 year into the pandemic and how people are really exploring their own mental health. Any questions stand out for you?
One of the things I encourage people to do is to think about what values are important to them. And there's a nice tool from a therapy called acceptance and commitment therapy, and it really invites people to think about the values that are important to them, how they want to live their lives, what kind of people they want to be. Do we value honesty? Do we value creativity? Do we value adventure? Do we value integrity? And to then ask ourselves, are we living our lives in line with our values? And I think as I've been working clinically, that's one of the things that has been really helpful to explore with my clients is right now, given all of the changes, given the exhaustion, the fatigue, the stress, the lack of control that people are experiencing, are they still living by their values, or have they lost sight of what's important to them, and have they been stuck or preoccupied in the day-to-day stressors? And I think when people are stuck in the day-to-day stressors, it's so important to have that self-compassion and be mindful, as Ayaz mentioned, to be able to really think about what's important here, where are my priorities, where is my passion, where do I want to be, how do I want to be, and how can I get back on track?
I appreciate that very much, because it's giving yourself a break. What you're describing, Taslim, Ayaz, what you're talking about as well, really speaks to the self-care. And one of the most common questions I've heard during this pandemic, and I know the intention is pure when people are asking, they check in and say, how are you doing? But the value of flipping that question and starting to ask people of, hey, how are you taking care of yourself, is such an important one, because it speaks to these points that you both are articulating very well for us, that we need to remember to recharge our batteries and remove that pressure that we might feel that our values are excellence, our values are philanthropy, and we put so much energy out there. And a lot of people, the feedback I've heard from people in the community, whether they're leaders, whether they're friends in the social circle, has spoken to the fact that they are depleted. And now when we're in this point, and we have this self-recognition that, this isn't a bad day. This is a common trend where I could use some support. As you work with the health board here in Canada, can you speak to the resources that are available when someone comes to the position of, I'm ready to ask for help, I'm going to reach out? Where can they go within the community? Let's start there, Ayaz. What is available?
Great question. So, within the community, we do have several internal resources that are focused around education, as well as helping you navigate the system. And we also have connections to external resources as well, through external partnerships, as well as knowledge of navigating the mental health care system. So, the mental health care system is complicated, right? There are all sorts of different services that are available, and there's many issues with our mental health care system. There's differences depending on your province. I would think about navigating the services in a similar way that you would physical illnesses, right? So first, you would ask yourself, could this be an emergency? So, for example, if you're experiencing suicidal thoughts and you think you might actually do something, that's an emergency. You should go to the emergency room. You'll see a doctor there, and perhaps a crisis team, perhaps a psychiatrist. If it's not an emergency, then the best first step is to see your family doctor or primary care nurse practitioner. And if you don't have one, you could go to a walk-in clinic. So remember, it's important to be attuned to your mental health and wellness, but it's not your job to diagnose others or yourselves, right? If you're experiencing a mental health challenge, stop the train early and address it early by going to your family doctor, primary care nurse practitioner. From there, your doctor may be completely capable of addressing your concerns with you, but at times they might connect you to other services where you would benefit more from, or request consultation from a mental health expert. Additionally, the access line is, we are ready to hold your hand through helping you navigate difficulties of our system. So if you have questions around navigating the system, you can give the access line a call as well. With regards to other internal resources, that we have developed through the Council for Canada. So we offer a variety of different courses, for example, in order to learn how to live your life in a more fulfilling way. Then I would encourage you to take the Living Life to the Full course. If you'd like to learn more about how to support others with mental health crises and how to recognize the signs and symptoms early and how to connect people to appropriate care, then Mental Health First Aid would be the course for you. We also have a Baby to Be program, which is a resiliency-focused course for expecting parents. There's psychological first aid, which teaches one how to intervene in the setting of a trauma, like a pandemic, or teaches people the basics of therapy, essentially. Then, there's a variety of other resources as well. We have on iCanada website, we have a cognitive behavioral therapy webinar series that you can watch on demand. There is also Women on Wednesdays, there's Mothers on Mondays. So there are a variety of internal resources. I've only mentioned a sampling of those. If you are interested in taking external courses, for example, to learn more about resiliency building, we've done an environmental scan of the different resiliency initiatives that are out there, and you can call Access Line and find out which would be the best fit for you. If you are interested in accessing psychotherapy, I would encourage you to reach out to the Access Line as well, because we can help you to navigate the system to find the right fit for you. So whether that's a form of psychotherapy that's more focused on skill building, or one that's more focused on looking at the underlying reasons behind what's going on and addressing those, we can help you to figure that out. Additionally, from a financial perspective, we can certainly try to connect you to government-funded options or sliding scale options.
Ayaz, those sound like great resources to help the community. One of the questions I've always had, and Taslim, I'm going to direct this to you, is the psychologist, the psychiatrist, the psychotherapist. Those are important designations, but can you establish the difference of which resource I know I'll need depending on the circumstance?
It's a good question, Riaz, but it's a complicated answer, unfortunately. And it largely depends on people's benefits a lot of the time when it comes to certain resources. I would say usually if you're going to see your primary care physician or nurse practitioner, they'll often direct you to a psychiatrist if they think you need some medication support or if you need diagnostic clarification. So just to get a better idea of what's going on. A referral to a psychologist might be made, again, for diagnostic clarification. So if it looks like it's a complicated situation, the primary care physician or nurse practitioner doesn't really know what's going on, a referral to a psychologist will help with that diagnostic piece. And then psychologists also offer psychotherapy. So that's the talk therapy that we often think about, or counseling. But what I usually suggest to people is to really think about how you're going to connect with someone, because when we're looking for a mental health professional, that connection is one of the most important pieces. You also want to find someone who is licensed. And so, regardless of which province you're living in or which territory you're living in, think about, what are the certifying bodies? So for example, across the country, you have to be licensed to be a psychologist. You have to be licensed to be a psychiatrist. And so knowing that someone has a license to practice helps you know and helps you have the reassurance that the person, quote unquote, knows what they're doing. But outside of that license, it's really about thinking of what kind of connection do you want with someone? Do you feel comfortable? Do you feel safe? And do you trust that they know how to support you in your journey?
That's great context and very helpful to making these decisions, because the point we're at now, I feel as if the conversations of convenience on a daily basis, those fell by the wayside. If you're going to the office, those conversations in the hallway, those conversations at the water cooler, dropping into somebody's office, maybe a Jamatkhanas afterwards, all of those touch points disappeared. And if we're struggling and we're struggling alone, sometimes it's difficult to summon that courage and then make that confession of, okay, one, I need help, and two, I feel I have nobody to talk to, because there's still this stigma of shame and embarrassment attached to mental health. And this is a real opportunity to shift that conversation. Instead of resistance, it's more acceptance. And either of you, I'd love to hear your commentary on this, on how we continue this trend. If there's one silver lining, it's that the conversations got real about the psychological struggle we've all personally been through, because they're different on many levels. How can we continue to remove this stigma around mental health and break through these barriers?
So thanks for the question, Riaz. Stigma comes from people judging others for their mental illness. And if we look at our community, or any community, about 2 in every 3 people with mental illness, they suffer in silence because they're fearing judgment and rejection. And you're absolutely right, it has to change, and we all have a role to play in that. If I were to ask everybody who's viewing, who's left-handed, right? There was a time not so long ago when you would be stigmatized for that. So we do need to really fundamentally change the way that we think about mental health. As we discussed, we exercise and eat healthy to prevent long-term problems, but when we feel sick, we go to the doctor, and there's nothing wrong with saying that. So similarly, we take preventative measures for our mental health, but there's nothing wrong with going to see a professional when things aren't quite right. I think it really begins with some introspection. I hope I've, convinced you that it is actually a very important issue, because stigma can be more disabling than the mental illness itself sometimes, and our actions can actually prevent people from seeking treatment and recovering. So a judgmental comment that's unsolicited about someone's mental health, for example, may actually prevent recovery in this way. So it's a major barrier to help seeking and recovery, and it's oppressing and it's alienating. And, one of our number one duties is to foster an environment of inclusiveness. So we really have to help to educate others about the importance of seeking assessment and treatment early.
I think that when we think about any kind of stigma, it comes often from a place of misinformation and a place of fear. And so I think, starting with that introspection, asking yourself, what makes us so uncomfortable with someone else who has a mental illness, or what makes us so uncomfortable with acknowledging our own mental health challenges? And I think being able to really start to understand what's going on for ourselves can help us kind of combat some of that stigma. We can also seek out more information, because there are a lot of myths around mental illness, and the Health Board is doing a fantastic job at dispelling some of those myths. And then I think connecting with people, getting to know others, and sharing your stories of your own struggles and listening to others, and really listening, not judging, not assuming, really listening with a compassionate and empathetic ear so that you can understand.
This era of the need for assertive empathy, Taslim, that you're mentioning is incredible. Like, this is a polarizing climate that we've been living through. We're so quick to judge, we're quick to reject, and bottom line, we all have this need, this innate need for a strong sense of belonging. Our community's given that to us over the years. Especially, we've seen the power of this show through the past year to bring everyone together. But perhaps we could wrap the conversation on this note. We've talked about acceptance, we've talked self-awareness, the need for empathy in this area. But for the viewer connecting with this message right now, Ayaz, I'll throw this to you, and then Taslim, I'd love to get your thoughts. But the first step for navigating the mental health landscape, where can we begin if we're realizing that we need some help?
Yeah, so great question. I would encourage anybody who believes that they may benefit from some support, or may possibly have a mental illness, to pick up the phone and contact your primary care provider, so your family doctor or primary care nurse practitioner, or go to a walk-in clinic as a number one step. if it's not an emergency. If it's an emergency, then going to the emergency room. Navigating the system is complicated, and the access line can certainly help with navigation if you have questions. But I think the important thing is that that we're proactive, right? That we value our brain as much as we value our other organs, if not more. That we seek to be educated in this regard. So if you're not sure, let this be a sign. If you are struggling, pick up the phone and make an appointment with your doctor.
I think this term pandemic fine has been floating around, and that's a bit of an acknowledgement that we're all struggling just a little bit, and yet nothing particularly bad is happening. I would invite us to not be pandemic fine. If we're not fine, let's acknowledge it. Let's identify exactly how we're feeling, the ways that we're struggling, the ways in which we're feeling disconnected, and let's not just blame it on the pandemic. Let's own it, let's acknowledge it, and then let's figure out what we want to do about it. Like Ayaz said, the system is a complicated one to navigate, but until we know how we're feeling and until we really own it, we're probably not going to seek out help, which means we're not going to navigate that system in the first place. So let's start with ourselves and let's erase that term of pandemic fine, and let's just ask ourselves, how are we actually doing right now?
Well, that is a great note to end this on. You've touched on some powerful themes when we talk transparency, we talk honesty, the courage to open up, share, and ask for help, and above all, just leading with empathy during this time. And I want to acknowledge both of you for being a part of this conversation and contributing your expertise to how we're really doing and how we combat this challenge and overcome the challenges surrounding mental health. So Ayaz, Taslim, thank you for being here tonight.
Thank you so much for having us.
Thank you.
And now we have a special segment featuring Jamati voices. Sohail Thakur is a management consultant who happens to also be a marathon runner. Aliyah Noorani is an entrepreneur and also a fitness aficionado. And Shahid Devji is a television journalist, digital media producer, and recent host of Friday Night Reflections himself. We're privileged to have them share their journeys with us about improving their own mental health. Having recently been thinking and writing about the importance of conversation, human connection, and support from others for one's positive mental health, these stories are particularly powerful, and I hope you'll enjoy them. Thank you to all of them for sharing their experiences with us.
As a young man who was starting my career, I was avoiding people. I had like radar that I could just tell if people were going to be angry, if they're feeling off. I would avoid those situations like the plague, and I was just a master of avoidance. The challenge was that my career, I was a project manager, and so part of that job is to deal with conflicts and deal with people who are upset, and it was starting to affect my career. Luckily for me, I was involved in the support groups at that time, and through the process of talking, I started to uncover some of why that avoidance behavior was there. It wasn't conscious in my mind, but we ended up uncovering that it was, as a child, I witnessed my parents going through a pretty painful divorce, and they fought a lot. And as a kid, I made a decision that anger was terrible and that it had no value, and I had to avoid it. And then I made that decision like 7, 8 years old, but then it shows up in my adult life and I'm starting to avoid things. So through that process, once we recognized that I was an anger avoider, we started to figure out techniques of how to express anger in ways that didn't harm people, and I felt so much better. And so techniques like that, which I learned through counseling, really started to shift my life, because now I was able to be in work situations where I'm facing people who are upset, and instead of collapsing in myself, I was able to stay in my full power and face those people and deal with the situation in a mature way, de-escalate it, bring everybody back to a place where we could have a proper conversation. So I really saw that process of sharing my feelings and learning techniques really helped me in getting to a better place in my life. So I think for men in particular, it's really important, and I really want to encourage you to share your feelings. Find a support group, find a place where it's safe for you to share your feelings, because bottling it up, keeping it inside all the time and never talking about it just starts to create like a pressure inside you, and then it bursts out, and then we're into all sorts of painful situations around anger or saying things inappropriately and doing damage in our family systems or our work situations. So clearly for me, sharing my feelings helped heal my past. It created a huge amount of self-awareness for myself, and I really just want to encourage men, and feel free to reach out to me as well. I'd be happy to talk to any of you. Thank you so much for listening.
In September 2017, everything went gray. I stopped eating, cry and not know why, and didn't recognize myself anymore. So with one failed attempt in ending my life, 30 days in a psych unit, 4 doctors, 3 medications, and 8 family members led to a transformation. So if you live a life of meaning, fight through the pain, have hobbies you love and interests that drive you, with friends and family who make you feel like you can do anything in this world. And regardless of the cards this life has dealt you, there's one thing that's for sure, that you always defy all odds with your head held high and give 110% to each and every day, because that's the hustler you are.
We'll have all that and more tonight at 11:30.
I had one of the coolest jobs in the world. I was on TV every day. When I wasn't working, I was spending time with my beautiful wife-to-be. I was healthy, my family was healthy, and I lived in one of the greatest cities on the planet. I should have been happy, but I wasn't. There were times when I would cry at work. I couldn't sleep at night, and I didn't want to wake up in the morning. I never had any energy. I was never hungry. Happy moments didn't make me happy. They made me mad. I was angry, sad, irritated. I felt defeated all the time. I was worthless. I wasn't happy. Far from it. Many of you may be able to relate, and you might even know why, but at the time, I didn't even know why I felt the way I did. I thought maybe I didn't like my job, or maybe I was dissatisfied with my relationships, or maybe there was something else that was affecting my mood. But over time, I realized it wasn't something or someone else making me feel the way I did. It was depression. I was depressed. Nobody chooses to be depressed. Depression chooses you. And when it does, you probably don't know how to deal with it or even what you're dealing with. I didn't. I tried to change almost everything in my life with the hopes it would change the way I felt. I left my job. I questioned my relationships. I doubted my ability and self-worth. None of it worked. What helped was the realization that maybe it wasn't me. Maybe I had a disease. The way I was feeling wasn't my fault or anyone else's. It could have been biological, it could have been purely mental, or maybe the stresses of life were getting to me. But everyone reacts differently. For me, the best way to deal was choosing to believe. Believe that I was better than I was letting on, that it wasn't me. That didn't come easy or quickly. It started with talking to those closest to me, asking for help, and hearing their belief in me. And then talking to my doctor, and hearing him tell me that there were ways I could get better. Some worked and some didn't, but over time I've started to deal better and feel better, and that's because I stopped fighting and started believing. It's not something I feel I've beat, but it's definitely something I feel I have a better handle of now than I did before. And when it creeps up, and it does, and I begin to feel those feelings again, I tell myself it's the depression talking. It's not me, and I choose me. If you feel like this, don't let it define you, because it's not you, and there is a way out.
Talk to your doctor or someone that's close to you. Not only will it help you, it'll also help them better understand what you're going through.
For more information on depression or how to help someone dealing with depression, visit any of these websites here. And don't wait, because choosing to get better is the first step.
such an important conversation. As the panelists noted, there are a variety of resources available and we shouldn't be hesitant to make use of them. Within the Jamaat, there are weekly Women on Wednesdays workshops at 5 p.m. Pacific or 8 p.m. Eastern Time. Registration is available through iicanada.org or the Ismaili/Canada. We also encourage the Jamaat to register for the Mental Health First Aid course, which will empower you to notice mental health challenges. Anyone who is feeling mental health challenges can also be put in touch with a healthcare professional by calling the Access line. And now we will go to our recurring segment, COVID Conversations. We now have 4 approved vaccines available for use in Canada, and the prospect of everyone getting their vaccine is closer than ever. But that is leaving many asking, which vaccine is right for me? This week's COVID Conversations will let us know.
There are currently 4 vaccines approved for use in Canada by Health Canada, but which one should I get? Here's why you should get whichever vaccine is offered to you. First, all the vaccines work. While the earlier Pfizer and Moderna vaccines showed a higher efficacy rate at preventing COVID-19 symptoms, all vaccines showed effectiveness at preventing serious illness, hospitalizations, and death. Second, all the vaccines are safe. All the vaccines have met Health Canada's safety requirements. Before they were approved, Health Canada conducted a rigorous scientific review to assess the safety of all of the approved COVID-19 vaccines. It is also the consensus of the Canadian public health authorities that it is safer to get a vaccine than to get COVID-19. Of course, if you have any specific health concerns or medical conditions, it is best to consult your doctor before scheduling your vaccine appointment. All provincial health authorities agree the right vaccine is the one in front of you. Receiving a vaccination, regardless of which option you choose, will benefit your own health as well as the health of families and all of the communities in which we live. The faster individuals step up to be vaccinated, the more quickly our communities will have protection against the continued spread of the virus and reduce the chances of hospitalization. Widespread vaccination will help all of us return to a more normal way of life sooner. And remember, once you get your vaccine, continue to follow all public health guidelines to protect yourself and others from COVID-19. Wash your hands, stay home, and get tested if you are feeling ill. Keep a safe distance from others and wear a mask. Inshallah, we will get through this together.
An important segment right there on the vaccines that have been approved. Listen, before we go, this has been an honor to be hosting this week and to cover a topic I'm very passionate about. It's an extra honor as this week is the 50th episode of Friday Night Reflections. It's a milestone and a special initiative to keep our Jamaat connected in these times of separation. I also wanted to let you know about next week's show. Next week, we will be celebrating the Festival of Navroz. To prepare, on Friday Night Reflections, we will learn how to make some Navroz specialties, enjoy a retrospective of the year, and some extra special musical expressions. And just for the kids this Navroz, join us for Ismaili TV's first animated program, Hafiz and the Half-Seen Adventure. Enjoy this peek at the program. And now, as always, we will end this week's episode with some musical expressions. Thank you for joining us and have a wonderful week.
মানসিক স্বাস্থ্য নিয়ে কথা বলাটা এত কঠিন কেন হয়ে পড়ে? আমরা দৈনন্দিন জীবনে অনেক কথাই নিজেদের মাঝে দাবিয়ে রাখি, যার প্রভাব পড়ে আমাদের মানসিক স্বাস্থ্যের ওপর। এই ভিডিওটি কিছু এমন সব কথা নিয়ে বানানো। ভিডিওটি দেখে যদি একটা কনভারসেশন শুরু হয়, যদি ভিডিওটি একটিও মানুষকে কোনো রকমভাবে সাহায্য করে এটা বুঝতে যে সে একা নয়, তাহলে ভাববো আমাদের চেষ্টা সফল ছিল। তোমার জন্য নিশিরাতে একা একা কথা বলা, তোমার জন্য অচিন চোখে অকারণে হারিয়ে যাওয়া, তোমার জন্য কবিতা কাব্য গল্প নিয়ে থাকা, তোমার জন্য মেঘলা আকাশ বৃষ্টি নামা। তুমি যদি দেখো দেখবে খুনি দূরে দাঁড়িয়ে আছি স্থির হয়ে শুধু তোমার জন্য। তুমি যদি ডাকো আমার কাছে তোমার, আসবো ছুটে তোমারই সেই পথ পানে। তোমাতেই তো আমার আছে যত চাওয়া পাওয়া, তোমাতেই তো শেষটা যে হয় শুরু তোমায় পাওয়া, তোমাতেই তো ভোর যে হয় আর রবি ডুবে যায় তোমায়। সন্ধ্যে নামলে আকাশ জুড়ে থাকে তারার মেলা, তোমার জন্য রাতের পাখিরা গায়ে গান অচেনা।